Well, just speaking for myself, like I guess I think of a microaggression as when somebody says something that um, says or does something that is like a manifestation of transphobia, um, and I notice it and they don't. It was kind of a microaggression that then snowballed into a macroaggression. So I'm taking a film class, and for this film class, we were doing like a group shoot, and we'd all brought in costumes to wear, and like sort of had like a layout of like what we were gonna film, but nothing had really been decided. And one of the things we were going to do is like have some people in dresses. So my professor was like, "Go put on that dress," and I was like, "Okay." Like I take the dress, I look at it, and I'm like going to the bathroom, and I'm like, and then she says, "You have to take off your clothes under it." So I was wearing just like a like very nice like button up that I could have worn under the dress, and like jeans that I probably also could have worn under the dress. It wasn't that serious, so I was just planning on keeping at least like most of my clothes on, depending on how comfortable I was. So when she says, "Oh, you have to take off all of your clothes under it and then put on the dress," I was like, "No, thank you. I'm just gonna keep my shirt on, at least." And she said, "No, like we're doing this shoot, you have to take your clothes off." So that was like the microaggression part because I was like, okay, like, there's something to me really inherently transphobic about like not trusting people's boundaries, especially in terms of like things that, are very gendered in that way, but are kind of assumed that people can just sort of weave in and out of those situations just with clothes, and that it just the assumption that that's going to be comfortable for everyone. And also when I said it was uncomfortable for me, like not trusting me felt like, just really definitely triggered a lot of like people not trusting me when I tell them about my gender, and um, like the transphobia of just not really believing trans people and not really understanding or empathizing with discomfort around gender and like gendered objects. Um, so that was the microaggression, but it turned into very much a macroaggression because she then went on to be like, um, "No, you have to do it. You have to do it." And I said, "I'm not going to," very calmly, But she sort of just got really upset about it, I think, and I couldn't really understand why. But she kept being like, "You have to do it. Like, we all said we were going to do this shoot, and you have to take off all your clothes under and put that dress on." And it got to the point where, in front of the entire class, I was like, I felt like I was like saying, like, Harry Potter, they have like the like forbidden spells, or you like just like, "Ah, Father Kadabra," or whatever. I was just like, "I am transgender!" The worst part of it was that like she is kind of like her reaction was just like, you know, sort of like the sudden realization that she'd done something wrong, and like, you know, in that moment, like the best way to respond would be like take responsibility, like, and just move on and try to like, maybe check in with me afterwards to see if I'm okay. But what she did was, so she gets kind of upset and like literally says, "Well, if that was the case, you should have said that earlier." I was like, just like the expectation that trans people like constantly have to speak up for themselves and like assert themselves in situations rather than like trying to understand like gender variation and like diversity and accommodate that before a trans person like speaks up for themselves, when it's like actually very dangerous to speak up for yourself in most situations, and dangerous like in the way where like if I don't know, I think I've been in situations where I've stood up for myself in that way, and then if it's in like a very big setting, there is just like a really good chance that there are like a few people who just after that refuse to make eye contact with me, and like, it just starts to become like um a snowball effect of microaggressions like within like whatever little community that I've outed myself in, especially if it's in a way that's so like assertive, because I don't know, I think in people's heads it's just like me being like selfish and like a burden, and like, they kind of write me off as like, I don't know, just like a lot of like I think a lot of transphobia gets bubbles up and they start um, ignoring me and like isolating me. Some of us can't divorce the trauma we've experienced as a result from our identity from the microaggressions we experience. And if you're able to divorce those two things, like the history of oppression and the words that people say, if you're able to like just, you know, blow it off or say it's no big deal, you're overreacting, then clearly you've had the opportunity to get to a place of like self-agency where you're no longer able to empathize with people who don't have that privilege. I don't know, I just think that if you really don't think that your words and actions, no matter how small or big, have an impact on how people think and feel, then you must feel pretty powerless. You must feel like pretty inadequate. And like, I take a lot of pride in the ways that like my words and actions can affect the people around me. And I think that if everyone had that attitude, the world would be a better place.